Welcome to the MCAT Basics Podcast, brought to you by the physicians at Med School Coach. Each week, Sam Smith breaks down high-yield MCAT topics so you can score as high as possible on test day.
Welcome to a bonus episode of MCAT Basics. Today, I am joined by Madhavi Murali. She is a fifth-year student in the BA-MD program at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, which is the equivalent of a third-year medical student. And she's joining me today to talk a little bit about transitioning to medical school. So with that said, Madhavi, thanks for your time and thanks for joining me.
Yeah, of course. I'm glad to be here.
I'll just start with a little bit about you. So kind of what's your background in terms of this BA-MD program? What got you interested in it and how's that been?
Yeah, so like you said, my name is Madhavi Murali, and I'm a fifth year in the UMKC's six-year BA-MD program. So fifth year is kind of the equivalent of a third-year medical student in the traditional medical school route, with the 4 years of undergrad and 4 years of medical school. I'm from Chicago, the northwest suburbs, kind of near Lake Zurich, that area. And I have a German Shepherd back at home, and things are great at home. So, just kind of with the program, what really drew me to it was the fact that it is a direct six-year program. It does save you 2 years. And one thing that a lot of people overlook, aside from the fact that you save those 2 years, is it gives you a lot of clinical experience over a span of 6 years. So students are kind of able to work with patients, work with doing practice interviews and all of that stuff over multiple years. We get really comfortable with talking to patients. And that's something I'm really a big fan of in the program.
Very cool. And how'd you know? So you had to make the decision going into undergrad, right? Whether, to do an MBA, MD program. So how'd you know in high school that that's what you wanted to do?
Yeah, so that's actually a really big thing. And when I talk to younger years who are looking to go into the program, that's something I really talk to them about too, because you do really need to know that you are interested in medicine going into this. I had a lot of experience in high school doing a lot of medical related things. I was president of our Future Doctors of America Club. I got to do a lot of shadowing, working with my aunt, who's a neonatologist. And so I really made sure I immersed myself in the medical experience to make sure that this is what I want to do. Because once you get into the program, it's great because it's short, but you really need to be motivated and you really need to know that this is what you want. So that's kind of how I got into it. A lot of peers who have parents who are physicians, so they kind of knew from there that that's what they wanted to do, just kind of working with their parents and shadowing them as well.
Gotcha. So do you know yet what specialty you kind of want to go into? Where's your thinking on that so far?
Yeah, so actually, I want to go into otolaryngology. I love the field. I just completed my surgery rotation just about 2 months ago and realized that, wow, I want to be in the OR. It's really interesting because I wanted to do IM for a long time. I really like the clinical side of things. I like the long-term relationships with patients. But when I did my surgery rotation, I started thinking about some surgical subspecialties, and that's what led me to ENT. I just finished an ENT elective and I loved it. So that's what I'm going to go for.
All right. So let's start with, what are some things you learned during your first year of going from this, going from your BS into going in from your BA into your MD? What did you kind of learn that you could transfer over and tell some students about?
Yeah, so I think developing kind of those study strategies early on is really important. Our program is kind of interesting because when you go into high school or go from high school into this BA-MD program, you kind of have the med school classes like intermixed all throughout your 6 years. So first year, you start getting a little bit of exposure to anatomy, and then second year, you take this course called Human Structure Function, which is kind of like a comprehensive, all-knowing, really in-depth anatomy course. So that kind of level of med school courses are kind of all throughout your 6 years. So from my first year, I kind of realized that developing strong study strategies is really important. And, basic things of just studying a little bit every day, kind of keeping up with the material is pretty important. So I think the program does a really good job of easing you into that. And increasing the number of med school courses you take each year so that you get the hang of kind of getting into medical school level courses. But biggest thing is just studying a little bit every day so that you can get the hang of it.
And what kind of did you get any resources to help you with this, or how'd you kind of figure out how to do that?
Yeah, so resources, I think biggest thing is asking people who are older than you. They're even outside of the BA MD program, there's always going to be students who are, in the year above you or who are going to a medical school that you're interested in. And if you reach out to them and ask them like, hey, how did you study for this course? Or how did you study for, this step 1 exam and so on, or even the MCAT, that'll help you a lot. Finding someone who has similar study strategies as you is also really important, because if you ask 10 people, everyone will have 10 different things to say. But if you find someone who kind of learns the same way you do, or, likes to use flashcards, or likes to, kind of have some form of spaced repetition, and you work with them and develop that kind of helps a lot. So that's how I got through a lot of my courses and learned how to study for a lot of my courses.
Did you use Anki at all? I mean, I know a lot of people are familiar with that when they're studying for the MCAT. So is that something that you use too?
Yes, I absolutely love Anki. I used it, since my first year too of med school. Even for my undergrad classes that are kind of incorporated in the 6-year program, I use Anki. It's amazing. I know everyone will say that it's amazing, but I also have to add on, it's like Quizlet, but it scheduled your flashcards. So I survived off of step studying, off of my courses, all through that app. Gotcha.
So you just mentioned it there, which is the step exam. How do you think it's going to change now that it's supposed to go pass, no pass? I'm not sure if it officially is, but how do you see that affecting residency applications?
It'll be interesting. So a lot of people don't know. We really don't know what's going to happen. But something interesting is, I'm thinking, the emphasis on step 2 is going to be greater. Everyone's going to focus on your step 2 score, because otherwise it's really difficult to distinguish between medical students in classes, especially if they're not from a well-known medical school. So not having step 1 does make it really difficult to stand out for residency applications, especially if you're going for a more competitive specialty. And there's going to be more emphasis placed on your core rotations, the evaluations you get there, your letters of recommendation, and I believe step 2. But of course, nobody really knows what's going to happen. It's completely new. So
is there a chance that it doesn't go pass, no pass, or is that is it finished? Is that decided?
As far as I know, I think they said that the earliest they're going to make it pass or fail is January of 2022. But I don't think they ever confirmed. Yeah, I don't think they ever said it's going to be for sure this thing. I think that's the earliest it would be, but maybe they'll delay it. Maybe they'll say, oh, we're actually going to make it 2023, or oh, we're still thinking about it. So nobody really knows for sure, but that's the tentative date.
At Med School Coach, we know that getting into medical school is hard. In fact, 60% of pre-meds who apply to a medical school don't even get accepted. And if you want to get accepted into a top medical school, it's even harder. That's why more students than ever are turning to MCAT Tutoring by Med School Coach. Our tutors are all 99th percentile scorers, have been through rigorous training, and can help raise your MCAT score by 12 points or more. You need every competitive advantage you can get to get into med school, so why not get one-on-one tutoring from Med School Coach? Our expert team will create a custom program just for you and help you master MCAT content where you need the help most. You'll raise your MCAT score. We guarantee it. Visit us online at medschoolcoach.com and use offer code PODCAST10 to save 10% up to $400 on a Med School Coach MCAT tutoring package. You can achieve your medical school dreams, and Med School Coach can help.
The next question I want to ask you is about what's the hardest class you've taken so far, in your opinion, and what study strategies did you learn maybe while you're taking that course that really helped you through it?
Yeah, so I would say for me it was biochemistry. I took it in my second year of the program, and it was the beginning of my second year. So I was about like a year and a half out of high school. So still kind of adjusting to things. And I remember the first test hit me pretty hard because it was just a whole new way of thinking, whole new way of studying. I just wasn't used to it. And there's a lot of memorizing pathways. I used Anki at that time, and that saved me because that just helped me kind of just memorize the pathways so that later I could piece together how everything works and like make sense of everything. But biochem was definitely rough for a lot of my friends and I, but it was also a class that I really enjoyed after I got the hang of things. You know, the first two tests were rough, and then once you kind of learn, like, okay, this is how you study for this, or this is how you learn these pathways, then, you know, it starts making a lot more sense.
Gotcha. It's also cool. This is a little nerdy, but it's cool to see how all the biochemistry topics kind of tie together. You know, glycolysis ties together with gluconeogenesis, and they're all, I've always thought that's super interesting.
Yeah, we actually have a giant, my roommate and I, like when we were step studying, we got this giant biochem poster that like links all of the different pathways together, like every single one. So yeah, we glanced at that all the time.
Was the transition from the 2 years of kind of undergrad, I guess, then to the 4 years of medical school, was that a weird transition for you in the sense that like you knew you were in the program, but was it like a whole new, I'm guessing, older crop of students that all of a sudden, you know, you're going from undergrad to working with, you know, late 20s students? What was that like?
I'd say the transition was pretty smooth. UMKC does a good job of kind of, you know, linking you with peer mentors, linking you with upper year medical students to work with and help you during that transition. So we have our white coat ceremony after our second year, and that's when we start having like really like official clinical duties at the medical school once a year. It's like the continuing care clinic. And what UMKC does to help ease that transition is they put us into dosing groups or units. So I'm on a Blue 7 unit, for example, and each unit is consistent of like different groups of medical students of different ages. For example, if I was the third year, you know, I have another third year with me. There are fourth years, fifth years, and sixth years all on one unit, and we all work together in the internal medicine clinic as well as our IM rotations, which we have every year. So being paired in that group or put in that group and paired with like a senior partner who teaches you and guides you through that helps a lot, because otherwise it would be overwhelming just being thrown in the clinical setting and being expected to kind of ask patients and take a history from them without really having anyone to ask questions. So I think that transition was made a lot easier with that unit. That unit's also, you know, some people you can go to ask for advice on how to study for courses and stuff like that too.
It sounds like you relied quite heavily on people that were above you that, you know, had been through it before that could help you through it. So that's nice. So I'm wondering, you know, how did your kind of hobbies or things that you like to do maybe during undergrad, did that change at all during medical school? Did you have more or less time to do those? What was that like?
I think definitely, you know, while you'll have less time, you know, you make time for things that are important for you. The nice thing, you know, with medical school, if you're, you know, people's exams are generally on the same day, especially the first few years of medical school. So we'll work together to study, you know, we'll study together, make study groups, make plans. And then after our tests, you know, we make plans together too. So whether it's, you know, like, let's drive out to, you know, this area for vacation, or, hey, like, you know, why don't we go to this place to eat? Or why don't we, like, you know, sit and paint? Like, we kind of, by having a similar schedule, it's really nice because then you can kind of work with your friends to coordinate and go from there. Of course, you know, it's not, you have to, you know, delegate your time well, and you have to study when you need to study. But I think if you can schedule well, it's completely doable to do the things you love. I just saw my family last week and spent time with them. And so it's very possible.
That's awesome. Is there anything you like to do in your free time, and what kind of hobbies do you like to do during medical school?
I love painting. I just got into it about like 3 years ago. Yeah. So I like doing like acrylic painting, more like nature scenes, stuff like that. But otherwise, like, Kansas City has a ton of restaurants. We're known for like barbecue. So I love kind of going around and trying out new restaurants. It's a little bit hard right now with COVID, but before all of that, you know, we would always go out to new places.
So I'm wondering as well about how COVID has kind of affected your experience in medical school. Obviously, that's still going on, and hopefully it's over soon. But what did that do to some of your rotations, and what effect did that have on you?
Yeah. So for us, at UMKC specifically, our school was like kind of closed from March to June, like end of June, where everything was online. So I had just taken my step exams right before everything kind of closed down. And I was just at home for a few months, just doing online courses and stuff like that. What we did then, like from June up until now and through the rest of the year, is kind of mixing like clinical experiences with online experiences. So as a fifth year, which is like a third year medical student, we do a lot of, we have our core rotations, so like OB-GYN, surgery, peds. And so a lot of our rotations will be half online, half in person. So my OB-GYN experience, the first half was online. So we'll do a lot of online modules, studying practice questions, video meetings, stuff like that. And then we would go in person and just do our OB-GYN rotation. It'd just be shortened. So that way we could like limit the number of resources that students are using in the hospital, but still get that experience. But yeah, our school's just kind of going, month by month and making changes based on the situation in Missouri.
At Med School Coach, we know that studying for the MCAT exam can be challenging, especially for busy students on the go. That's why our team created MCAT Prep, the only all-encompassing study app built specifically for the MCAT. MCAT Prep by Med School Coach provides student access to extremely high-quality content and a personalized curriculum for free. The app has more than 250 videos, 1,000 flashcards, and 1,000 unique MCAT questions. Plus, MCAT Prep by Med School Coach allows students to create a personalized study schedule and track progress over time. You need every competitive advantage you can get to get into medical school, and now you can put the experts from Med School Coach into your pocket. It's the closest pre-med students can come to a personal tutor without spending a penny. Download MCAT Prep by Med School Coach for free at medschoolcoach.com/MCAT. Or download it directly from the Apple Store or Google Play Store. You can achieve your medical school dreams, and MCAT Prep by Med School Coach can help.
We talked a little bit about Anki. Is there any other resources like that you've used that you think would help students?
Yeah, so I would say, for undergrad, like MCAT studying and even like, all throughout med school, like Anki's, I think, for me, the gold standard. That's what I always recommend my friends. I always tell them like, hey, you should just try this app. Yeah. Even outside of medicine, it's really good, like for learning languages. Even if you just want to learn like names of presidents, stuff like that, that app is just amazing. You just sit down for like 5-10 minutes a day and open it up and just study what cards are due for you. You'll learn anything. So that I will always say is like the best thing to use. But, in medical school, just for specific resources, there is a thing called Sketchy Medical, which most medical students will have heard of once they get into med school. It's pretty much just kind of videos that explain different concepts. So they'll have like sketchy microbiology, where they'll draw a giant picture for each microbe, and the picture will just incorporate different like memory cues to help you remember like everything about like Staph aureus or everything about like streptococcus, stuff like that.
Is it a mnemonics thing?
Yeah. So they're videos. So it's like a story behind each picture. A good example would be like salmonella. They have a picture of just a giant salmon, and then they'll put like a lemon next to it to show that it's an acid-fast microbe. They'll have kind of like a giant, like 2 giant birds to like represent like, oh, well, it's like a it's in the gallbladder. And, it'll be on like a certain color plate to like help you remember like the stain that's used to identify it. So when you see that picture and you watch it, then you remember all the facts about salmonella, and it's so much easier to remember than just blindly remembering a list. So a lot of students use that. And then to make things even better, when I was studying for STEP, I watched all the sketchy videos and studied those really well. But then instead of just rewatching the videos, I found sketchy Anki decks and just studied those flashcards of the sketchies so that you can go through them, faster. And that was amazing. So highly recommend that too. That really makes it, things go faster and yeah.
So if I am applying to medical school right now and, hopefully I get in, and I think people listening to this might be applying to this cycle, what is just a few bits of information that you would really give to us? And I think one that you've definitely mentioned is, seeking out mentoring from others who are above you. Anki, that's another huge one. What other things kind of off the top of your head are things that maybe you didn't think about, but you think that others should know before they go in?
Yeah. So one thing is definitely be open-minded to, what you want to do for your career. Starting medical school, for me personally, I never really had ENT on my radar until very recently. And so while I'm really glad, I still, worked hard and put my best, foot forward throughout medical school, just kind of having that exposure to different fields, or just, like being more, doing more shadowing and stuff early on just to see what I was interested in, definitely would have been helpful in just helping me understand what I wanted to do earlier on. Of course, your third year of medical school or fifth year in this program is the time you do your cores and you rotate through. And, when you do your surgery rotation is when you can confirm like, hey, I want to do surgery. Or when you do your family medicine or peds, that's when a lot of people decide what they want to do. But you have that open-mindedness, just from day one of med school, just looking into everything, thinking about every specialty. I feel like that helps a lot, because then that can help you, start reaching out to older students who are also interested in the field and start asking them like, hey, why do you like this? Or, what did you do? Like, since you're interested in this, how did you go from there? I think that's always helpful.
What do you find interesting about surgery? What was the moment when it all clicked for you, when you're like, this is what I want to do?
So I don't think there's ever like a clicking moment.
Is there ever in life? I don't think that goes for life.
Yeah.
But it just never is. Anyways.
I wish things were that certain. That would be really nice if there was just a giant, green light that says, this is it. But I think it was, I wasn't really expecting, I was excited for surgery. I thought it'd be something new, and I've never really been in the OR that often, but I wasn't expecting to be like wanting to stay longer in the OR and wanting to, learn how to do more of those skills. And I did like working with my hands. Like I like painting. My mom loves sewing. And so I always kind of picked that up from her. But, being in the OR and practicing like the knot tying, the suturing, and just kind of actually in like being like the intervention for patients' cases. Like I liked the idea of just intervening and immediately, making a change for the patient. And I never really thought about it because a lot of what I'd been exposed to before was internal medicine stuff. So that's when I just started thinking about it. And so when I did my ENT elective and got to see ENT specific cases, like, even the routine cases like tonsillectomies, thyroidectomies, septoplasties, things that were just routine, I was still excited to see them and excited to learn about the anatomy specifically. There's so much head and neck anatomy to study. So I liked that aspect, but then I didn't want to lose, working with patients all the time. I really liked, talking to patients in a clinical setting, and following up with them over like many years and seeing patients of all ages and more internal medicine stuff. So my ENT elective really helped show me like, hey, well, this field, you can get the best of both worlds. Like you can be in the OR. I liked even the routine cases. There's some really cool head and neck cases you can do as well. And then, in the clinic, you can sit and build these relationships with these patients too. So that's kind of how I found it. But everyone has a different story,
That's awesome. So are you in the process now of applying to residencies? Is that a little later?
Yeah. So I actually have one more year left. So this year, I'm halfway through my fifth year. So still have to finish my core rotation. So right now I'm on my psychiatry rotation. Then I will have my pediatric and internal medicine rotation. Then we take step 2 after step 1 last year. And then my next year is when we do interviews, like applications, interviews, all of that good stuff.
Cool. When did you start thinking about taking step one? I always hear about, this might be anecdotal, but I always hear about the students that are like studying for step one the year before they go into medical school during the summer. When should you start studying for it? When should you start thinking about it, in your opinion?
Yeah, so I think it'd be excessive to study for it before you get into med school. Like, definitely take that time to relax, recharge and enjoy that time. Regardless, sixth year or not sixth year, either way, like you definitely need time to kind of just, enjoy time with friends and family. You don't need to start studying that much in advance, especially because it's kind of hard to study without really starting medical school and having any context to study from. And it may be like counterproductive because you'll be trying to learn all this material that you've never even heard of before. That being said, I think, being proactive is good. Once you start your classes, like for me personally, we started our pathology course and microbiology. When you're in those classes, learn the material really well. Don't just learn it for the test and, cram and dump and take the next test. If you sit and study a little bit every day and review the material, you're more likely to retain the information so that when you learn it well the first time and then you take step one or you're studying for step one and you're dedicated, it's so much easier to properly learn that. Another thing is, when you're in those classes, like your first and second year of med school before you take step one, I would watch Sketchy, with those classes. Like if you're in microbiology, I would watch the Sketchy videos alongside your microbiology class, like the videos that coincide with it. So that way, when you're studying for STEP, you're not watching all of these videos. It's like watching a new TV show for the first time. It's going to be so much harder to just memorize everything versus if it's, okay, this is my second or third time watching this TV show. You already know what's going on and you're just watching as a refresher. And then same thing with pathology. I would watch it or study pathology alongside pathoma, which is another huge thing that medical students love. It's a book written by Dr. Sitar, and it's a really nicely condensed version of everything pathology related. So people use that to study for STEP as well. So the biggest thing is just while you're in your classes, learn the material well, learn it alongside Sketchy and pathoma, and then go from there.
And what if a student is kind of finding themselves struggling? And I think for the most part, people listening to my podcast will mostly be, preparing to go into medical school. So, this will be people who are currently struggling. But let's say that, in 2 years, I'm going to take step one and I'm struggling. Kind of, what do you recommend? Is there tutoring that's offered? What are the different services? So,
the moment you realize, something's not working or, you're taking practice NBMEs and you're not getting the score you want, you really want to reach out. Whether it's an advisor, whether it's upper years, that's really important for, kind of moving forward. Because if you don't reach out early, it's going to be so much harder to catch up later. Tutoring is also an option. Med school coach is a great resource for a lot of students, just kind of having someone to support you and guide you through, your step one journey. Because it is a dedicated time. It's almost, it's practically a job studying all day, every day and sticking to that schedule. So having a tutor that can guide you through that is really, really helpful.
And you yourself are a tutor, right, for USMLE step one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, what would a study session with you look like? Is it mostly content? Are you talking about studying strategies, testing strategies? I mean, what does it look like?
Yeah. So you actually got all three. It's going to be a combination of all of those, dependent on what the student wants, but also kind of just we'll gauge it together. So first session, we're going to be talking about your strengths and weaknesses, your goals, what you've done so far to study, what you found has worked, what hasn't worked, and, talking about practice tests. How are you taking them? How are you taking your UWorld blocks, which are just, it's the question bank that medical students use to study for step one. So once we map out, everything you have done, everything you want to do, what's working, what's not, we'll come up with a study plan, like a calendar for the next upcoming weeks or months up until your step date. And we'll, choose between resources because for step one studying, there's like 10, 15, 20 different resources to use, and you definitely don't want to use all of them because you're going to spread yourself thin. So once we, pick on, like, hone in on, like, 3 or 4 resources to use, or even 2 or 3, we'll make that plan, and then we'll meet the next week. And then from there on, I kind of do a mix of content review and, study strategies. So, the student will sometimes tell me, like, hey, I want to lecture specifically on, the RAS system. Could you kind of, hone in on that? And then I'll be like, okay, I'll explain, how the kidneys work and releasing renin and go from there. But then we'll also dedicate time towards going through questions that the student was working on over the last week. So, for example, one of my students, we're working with her, and she's going through, a block of UWorld questions a day. And as she does those questions, she'll select about 10 or 15 that she was struggling with, whether it's, she just didn't know how to get to the right answer content-based, or she got the right answer and she doesn't know why she got the right answer. So then what we'll do, during our sessions is talk about, well, hey, how did you get here? Or, what do you think went wrong with this question? Or, oh, okay, well, this type of material, what's really high yield to know for the test is actually studying, this page of first aid. And we'll connect everything back to, this giant textbook that medical students use to reference for step 1. So it is a mix of, content-based review, learning study strategies, as well as just understanding how to read the question.
Cool. Well, very good. Is there anything else you'd want to say to anybody who is applying to medical school, getting ready to make that transition?
I'll say, embrace the uncertainty. Like, there's no way to know anything for sure, whether it's, knowing what medical school you want to go to, what you want to specialize in, where you're going to end up. There's a lot of uncertainty out there. So as long as you, just kind of take things day by day, study a little bit every day, and, take the time to recharge when you need to, you'll get through this long, long journey ahead. So it's worth it, but, just embrace that uncertainty.
Yeah, I'm going to complain about the med school application process real fast. It sucks. It's just such a, like, black hole. You don't know. You don't know why you're getting rejected from some schools. You don't know why you get interviews at others. It just seems like so it's good to know that there's more unknown in medicine as I keep going.
There's always an unknown. Yeah. Like, even residency, even fellowship after residency, there's unknowns. I talk to residents and I see them confused, and then I'm like, okay, it doesn't end.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. This was fun.
Yeah, of course. Nice meeting you.
Yeah, you too.
Each episode of MCAT Basics is brought to you by Med School Coach. To access Med School Coach services, including MCAT tutoring and medical school admissions advising, visit our website at medschoolcoach.com. Good luck as you prepare for the MCAT, and we hope you tune in again next time.